You know what's wild? When a company loudly announces they're shopping for $1 billion port facility and somehow an entire provincial government claims they had no clue it was happening. I'm talking Saskatchewan potash giant Nutrien choosing Washington State over British Columbia, and Premier David Eby acting like this was some covert operation conducted under the cover of darkness. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Let's dive into how BC apparently snoozed through one of the biggest economic opportunities in recent memory. So here's the setup. Nutrien, one of the world's largest potash producers, has been openly hunting for a new export terminal. We're talking $1 billion of investment, thousands of jobs, and a massive economic win for whoever lands it. This isn't a secret backroom deal. This is a company literally advertising their intentions like they're on The Bachelor handing out roses. And yet, when Nutrien chose Longview, Washington over BC ports, Premier Eby's response was basically the political equivalent of wait, there was homework due today. On CTV's Question Period, Eby said he had no idea Nutrien would put themselves in the hands of Donald Trump. Which is fascinating because Nutrien announced their port shopping plans 6 months ago. 6 months. That's half a year. That's 2 full seasons. That's enough time to binge-watch every Netflix series twice and still have time left over to maybe pay attention to billion-dollar investment opportunities in your region. But apparently, the BC government was too busy doing whatever BC governments do to notice a massive potash company waving its checkbook around. Now, Eby's spinning this as everyone else's fault. He's pointing fingers at Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe for not personally calling him up. He's blaming the federal Liberals for not keeping him in the loop. He's essentially playing the world's highest stakes game of it's not my fault and expecting people to buy it. The mental gymnastics here deserve a perfect 10 from the judges. Let's talk about Eby's specific complaints because they are something else. He told the host that instead of engaging with him about this huge decision, Scott Moe was busy talking to Danielle Smith about some non-existent pipeline project. Okay, first of all, even if that's true, whose job is it to track major economic development in their own province? Is Eby seriously suggesting that he needs Saskatchewan's premier to personally brief him on every business decision a Saskatchewan company makes? That's like blaming your neighbor for not telling you your house is on fire when you're standing right there watching the flames. Here's the thing that really gets me. BC has supposedly made port expansion a priority. This is allegedly a key part of their economic strategy. So if port development is such a massive priority, how do you miss $1 billion port project being shopped around? It's like saying pizza is your favorite food but somehow not noticing when someone opens a Domino's across the street. The lack of situational awareness is almost impressive in its completeness. And Eby didn't stop there. He complained that Nutrien had concerns about clogged-up rail lines and access to ports, and nobody told him about these concerns. Except here's the kicker, these aren't secret concerns whispered in dark alleys. Rail congestion and port access in BC have been well-documented problems for literally years. Companies have been complaining about this publicly. It's been in the news. It's been in industry reports. It's been everywhere except apparently on Eby's radar. Saying you didn't know about BC's rail and port problems is like living in Vancouver and claiming you had no idea it rains there. Scott Moe, to his credit, wasn't having any of this finger-pointing nonsense. He fired back on social media and in interviews saying Eby should look in the mirror instead of blaming others. And honestly, it's hard to argue with that. Moe pointed out that when someone decides not to invest in your area, the first question should be why, not whose fault it is that you didn't hear about it sooner. He also took a shot at Eby's approach to project approval, basically saying if you're picky about which projects you want, don't be surprised when companies take their business elsewhere. The really embarrassing part is that this entire situation was preventable with even minimal attention. Nutrien wasn't playing hide and seek. They were open about their search. Industry publications covered it. Trade groups knew about it. Literally anyone paying attention to the resource sector would have known this was happening. For a government that claims economic development and port expansion are priorities, missing this is like a hockey team saying winning is important and then not showing up to the playoffs. What makes this even more awkward is the timing. BC has been positioning itself as a gateway to Asian markets. The province has been talking up its ports as critical infrastructure for Canadian exports. There have been endless press releases and announcements about how important port capacity is for the future. And then when a major opportunity to actually expand that capacity comes along, they're apparently completely unaware until Washington State swoops in and closes the deal. It's economic development theater at its finest, all talk with no follow-through when it actually matters. Let's also appreciate the irony of Eby's Trump comment. He expressed shock that Nutrien would put themselves in the hands of Donald Trump by choosing an American port. But maybe, just maybe, companies choose locations based on things like infrastructure, regulatory environment, and business climate rather than political personalities. Washington offered something BC didn't, and it wasn't just different leadership. They offered a path forward that apparently was more attractive than whatever BC was bringing to the table, which seems to have been mostly confusion and inattention. The blame game Eby's playing here is Politics 101, but it's not particularly convincing. Blaming the federal government for not keeping you informed about a provincial economic opportunity is a reach. Blaming another province's premier for not playing messenger about their own company's decisions is even more of a stretch. At some point, you've got to own the fact that your government missed the boat, literally and figuratively. This was BC's opportunity to lose, and lose it they did, spectacularly. What's really fascinating is how this reflects on BC's approach to economic development more broadly. If you can miss $1 billion publicly announced project in a sector you claim to prioritize, what else are you missing? How many other opportunities are slipping through the cracks while everyone's focused on political optics instead of actual economic strategy? This isn't just about one potash terminal. It's about whether BC's government has the awareness and agility to compete for major investments in a competitive continental market. Saskatchewan isn't going to apologize for their company choosing the best option. Washington isn't going to feel bad about landing a massive economic win. And Nutrien made a business decision based on what worked best for them. The only people who should be uncomfortable here are the ones who somehow missed all the signs that this was happening and now want to blame everyone except the person they see in the mirror every morning. So where does this leave us? BC just watched $1 billion opportunity sail south, literally. The Premier is scrambling to explain how this happened without taking responsibility for it happening. Saskatchewan's Premier is basically doing a victory lap on social media. And somewhere in Washington state, officials are probably cracking open champagne and sending thank you notes to whoever in BC was asleep at the wheel. The lesson here isn't complicated. If you say something is a priority, you actually have to pay attention to it. If economic development matters, you can't afford to miss major projects being actively shopped around. And if you drop the ball, own it instead of pointing fingers at everyone else in the room. Because right now, BC looks like the kid who didn't study for the test and is blaming the teacher for not reminding them it was happening. If you found this breakdown as frustrating as I did, smash that like button. And if you want to stay on top of Canadian political drama as it unfolds, because trust me there's always more where this came from, hit subscribe. Canadian Insights keeps you informed on all the political theatre, economic fumbles, and leadership facepalms happening across this country. Drop a comment below with your take on who really dropped the ball here. And stick around because we've got more videos coming your way today breaking down everything happening in Canadian politics. This is Canadian Insights, where we don't just report the news, we call it like we see it. Catch you in the next one.